All right, at this time, actually, I'm going to make sure we can continue the meeting with a quorum. So we're going to determine if we do have a quorum present. So I'm going to ask for the precinct chairs, and then we'll go through and we'll determine the quorum. 1 Fox, Precinct 1. 8, Precinct 1. George Delinsky, Precinct 2. 18. Thank you, George. Matthew Callis, Precinct 3. 12. Julie Gito, Precinct 4. 14. Carmel Drews, Precinct 5. 14. Christine Yacobucci, Precinct 6. 15. Things are looking good. Diane Dolan, Precinct 7. 7. David Sheehan, Precinct 8. 15. Stand by for the quorum. Okay, we have 103 for the quorum. We can now proceed to do our business tonight. Now, just as a quick reminder, we are present this evening in the House, the Select Board members, the school committee members, Town Council, Town Clerk, Assistant Town Clerk, Moderator, Secretary, Town Accountant, Chair and Vice Chairs of the Finance Committee, Town Manager, and Superintendent of the Schools. And of course, we have you, the Town Meeting representatives. And this evening, we have Kate Federoff as our Town Council. Brian Winter could not make it this evening. Procedural motions are still in effect. And before we begin with tonight's business, I call on Select Board Member Joseph McCrisky for a couple of special comments. Mr. McCrisky.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Seal it. Folks, just want to introduce you to our updated town seal. If you look at the front of your town meeting books and you look at the town seal, you're going to see it. It looks like a swamp in one building, and we've heard that word recently. The colors have been off for years, going back to late 80s, early 90s, where the red background you see was never intended to be there. It was just one of those things where somebody made a seal, they changed this, they updated it, made a copy of it, it copied differently, and this is made possible by Larry Legolis in the IT department of the town of Stoughton that he did in his spare time. It was brought to his attention, he was told what it was supposed to look like, and he brought this back. Selectmen about a month and a half ago voted that this seal be updated and that it be used on all documents. If it's reproduced in color, that it be done in this way. This is the exact same image that was pulled from the town of Stoughton's 200th anniversary flag as well, so it's been updated that way. So this was back in 1891 that Article 11 of the town meeting had decided to have the selectmen come up with a town seal. And again, some of what you see in here, if you can see this, is this one here represents the first free library. I forget the gentleman's name, where this is a water wheel, and the difference is now, before, this is all blue, so it like it was sitting in the middle of a pond. So now you can see the green. This is the first free school. This is the coat of arms for the Stoughton family from Dorchester, and the harp represents the first the oldest musical society in the country. So it's this is a great update where it goes back to who we really are instead of going with something that really was never intended to be. And if you would like a sticker of this, I have 200 stickers with me, so as long as they hold out, everybody gets one. If you'd like one, please come see me. Put it on a notebook, on a coffee cup, whatever you want, okay? And I have them here, so just please step up. And Mr. Tisdale, would you take back to Larry my thanks, and I believe the thanks of a lot of people that we have the right seal now, and so we're moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCrisky. Next up is our Town Manager, Tom Coulter, who would like to make a couple of opening comments. Mr. Coulter.
Moderator, good evening. I greatly appreciate this opportunity to address this body. Let me start by saying just how grateful I am for the opportunity to meet many of you throughout this town meeting. As you know, the first 6 months of my time here in Stoughton brought many surprises. Beginning in early January, we experienced a catastrophic flood in Town Hall, which displaced every employee. Yet not a single day was lost. I learned then as I now know, that we are blessed with an extraordinary group of committed town employees. The building reconstruction will be complete in just a very few weeks. All are invited to visit us at Town Hall for an open house on Thursday evening, June 15th, from 5 to 7 p.m., and details will follow. By the end of January, we learned of a looming crisis in our employee health insurance program. By working closely with our Employee Insurance Advisory Committee, the crisis was averted. I can't fully express how grateful I am to the town and school employees for their efforts in quickly addressing this crisis. Throughout the spring, we have re-engaged with all 8 unions in an effort to negotiate labor contracts. I'm happy to report that at least 7 of those bargaining units have agreed to successor contracts already. I am proud to say that in Stoughton, we have labor harmony. This town meeting has been a valuable learning experience for me. I understand the issues and I respect the work done by this body. Much has been accomplished. For instance, you have made major investments in water, sewer, and school infrastructure. You have once again supported our educational system, which is the hallmark of our community. You have committed to rebuilding our town roads. You have made an investment in online permitting that will streamline development services and serve as the foundation for our long-term economic development plan. Through the CPA, you have approved many exciting projects, which will serve our community for decades to come. You have invested $200,000 toward the rehabilitation of the train depot. We can now leverage that investment into substantial state funding needed to build a state-of-the-art community center. Activating this long-abandoned building will allow us to reach our #1 economic development goal of downtown revitalization. Finally, the fire station will soon be a reality. I am pleased to announce that the groundbreaking will take place in the next couple of weeks. The dates will be announced on our website. While so much has been accomplished, we still have many challenges and opportunity before us. As you know, our water, sewer, and solid waste departments have carried structural deficits for several years. Those departments have been subsidized by the general fund. That practice has created significant stress on the town budget and the need to use free cash in balancing the annual operating budget. Those practices can and must end if we're to build our cash reserves and maintain a AA bond rating. On June 13th, the Select Board will be holding a public hearing to address the water, sewer, and solid waste structural deficits. While we have significantly reduced our dependency on MWRA water, we have not adjusted our rates to meet the debt service expense associated with the expansion of our water infrastructure. That bill has now come due and must be reflected in the water and sewer rates if we are to extinguish the structural deficit. On that same evening of June 13th, the Select Board will be conducting a solid waste hearing. In an effort to maintain the town's annual trash rate structure, staff is recommending to the Select Board several operational changes which will require the cooperation from and the collaboration with our residents. The town's current approach to solid waste management is both unaffordable and unsustainable. As town meeting representatives, I would encourage you to join us on the 13th. Considerable research and time has been invested in addressing these 2 issues. By closing the structural deficits, we will be well positioned to achieve the goals which are documented in the town's master plan. For example, by addressing these challenges, the future for the town of Stoughton is very bright. For example, the Glen Echo Park is now open. This recreational space is a treasure to the community. Its construction reflects our commitment to open space and community inclusion. Other projects will place Stoughton at the head of the class in terms of technology. For example, we are closely studying the features and benefits of Regional 911. With up to $10 million in state investment for a state-of-the-art communication system in Stoughton and a $500,000 a year reduction in our EMS operating budget, Regional 911 will bring us into the 21st century and allow our police, fire, and EMS teams to serve the residents of Stoughton with the most advanced technology available in the market today. While I understand that this has been a somewhat controversial issue, I am confident that our public information session, scheduled for June 22nd, will provide the information needed for us to make an informed decision. Under the direction of Trish Shropshire, I always struggle with Trish's last name, we are working to provide more open communication between our town government and the community. The town now has a new and improved website that is easier to navigate. Valuable information such as informational session dates can be viewed online. Information can also be accessed through Discover Stoughton Mass, accessed on the Discover Stoughton Mass app and the town manager's Facebook page. Department head reports can be viewed on the town manager's webpage. These reports detail all of the projects that your town employees are working on your behalf. I would like to close by offering my sincere thanks to the Select Board. You have been a source of great support and inspiration to our town employees. Your vision and commitment to good public policy will have a profound impact on the town of Stoughton for years to come. In closing, Mr. Moderator, I would like to thank you, sir. Your temperament and commitment to process and civility have made for another successful town meeting. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager Tom Coulter. Appreciate your comments. Okay, let's move to the business at hand. Please turn to page 61, Article 71, Climate Action Plan Committee. The petitioner is Molly Cochran. Molly, we need a motion from you.
I'm worried about this falling. All right, the motion, I will read the actual motion here. Proposed motion that the town vote to establish a climate action plan committee to be comprised of 9 members as follows. First, the town energy manager. Second, 1 member to be a town employee appointed by the town manager. Third, 1 member to be appointed by the Stoughton Energy and Sustainability Committee, and 6 members to be appointed by the Select Board following public posting of the openings. Said committee shall be formed no later than June 30th, 2023, shall meet in public meetings biweekly and conduct itself according to the standards governing town committees, shall be authorized with town manager approval to seek grant support, and shall be charged with issuing an interim report with recommendations, followed by a comprehensive final report no later than June 30th, 2025.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Carolyn Campbell seconded that. Seconded by Carol Campbell. What precinct, Carol? 5? 4. Sorry, 4. We have that? Thank you. Okay, can I have the Intergovernmental Relations Committee report? I can read that. You want to read that, Carmel? Just takes a second. There you go.
Yep, there we go. Intergovernmental Relations voted 5-0 to accept and recommend to town meeting Article 71.
Could you also, while you're up there, read the municipal regulations report?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Municipal regulations. No recommendation was made as a quorum was not available for a vote on the article.
Thank you very much, Carmel,
Yep.
our Deputy Moderator. All right, now it's time for technical questions.
Can I-
I'm sorry, presentation.
I have a presentation, which
Oh,
I know
thank you.
people are anxious to see.
We are
So
very
thank you
anxious.
very much.
Thank you.
And thank you to my technical assistants over there. Before we get into the details of the proposed article, I would like to give you some perspective and give you all some information which I think will be helpful in your decision-making tonight. I see this as Stoughton's opportunity really to be part of the solution. And let's talk for just a moment about what the problem is. If you could, thank you, you're right on the right page there. 20 and 30 years ago, we were in an urgent situation with respect to climate, and now we are in an emergency situation with respect to the climate. A headline from the New York Times last week said, quote, "Heat will likely soar to record levels in the next 5 years," and the source for that is the World Meteorological Organization. Next. Next slide, please. As you can imagine, climate change is going to have a dramatic impact on the production of food. This is a quote from NASA.gov talking about climate change having an effect on, even as early as 2030, a dramatic effect on the growing of wheat and corn. Next slide. It follows, of course, that climate change is going to have an enormous effect on the economy. According to the Boston Globe from February 19, 2023, climate change is a secret driver of inflation, and as extreme weather continues to impact crops and production capacity, the cost of necessities will continue to rise. Next. Just to give you a few examples, and there are so many examples you couldn't really narrow it down about extreme weather events that have been suffered either currently, there was last week, there was a dramatic event in Italy, but in the last couple of years. This goes back a year ago, there was a terrible flooding in East Asia, and it's reported by UNICEF actually, is the quote here is from UNICEF, and that months later, 4 million children were still living near contaminated and stagnant floodwaters. Also noted by the Boston Globe that half of Pakistan's cotton crop was destroyed due to the flooding. Next, please. You may recall, as we suffered our own drought here in Massachusetts last summer, which was quite awful, that there was a serious drought in France and in, I think, other parts of Europe as well. And the Prime Minister said in 2022, the drought is the most severe recorded in our country. Next. This goes back actually a couple of years, but it was a very dramatic, and I think it got a lot of people's attention, of the tremendous bushfires in 2019 and 2020 in Australia. And according to CNN, an article from 2021, more than 10 million hectares of land burned, and over 1 billion animals are estimated to have died, with many species pushed close to extinction. Next. Bringing it home, we only have to look at California. You literally cannot keep up with all the dramatic weather events, many instances in the last couple of years of wildfires. And then more recently, tremendous flooding through California. And of course, that is where we get a lot of our food. So that of course affects us. And then a quote I found from the New York Times with respect to, of course, the drought generally in the west of the United States, that researchers say that the Southwest is experiencing a mega drought that is the worst in at least 1,200 years. Next. Just another sampling, disastrous flooding in Kentucky that took many lives and had a huge swath of destruction. I think that was 2022. Next. Buffalo storms, this one came kind of close to home because I have a family member living there. Of course, Buffalo always has terrible storms, but this was worse than usual, and it was the worst blizzard in 50 years, and the death toll was 47 people died in those storms last winter. Next. So the EPA tells us what about climate change causation, that it's obviously caused by greenhouse gases that have increased since the Industrial Revolution. And that the greenhouse gas emissions have caused the greenhouse effect, which causes the Earth's temperature to rise, and all sorts of consequences from that. Next. The UN reports that climate change is now affecting every country on every continent. It is disrupting national economies and affecting lives, costing people, communities, and countries dearly today and even more tomorrow. Next. So recently, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the world's leading climate scientists, delivered a final warning about the climate crisis, and that we are on the brink of irrevocable damage. And that's a very sobering thought, that we can't do a course correction in a few years from now that's really going to make enough of a difference. The UN Secretary General said, "This report is a clarion call to massively fast-track climate efforts by every country and every sector and on every time frame. Our world needs climate action on all fronts, everything, everywhere, all at once." Next. So we're part of the everything. We're part of the everywhere. The EPA reports that you, as an individual, as a business, as a community, can lessen the impacts of climate change by making choices that help advance solutions and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Next. So clearly, these are some complex and far-reaching problems, and I would think we would all understand that if you have such a complex set of problems to address, you need a plan. You need a strategic plan. Next. So the definition of a climate action plan, generally, and this was taken from the town of Burlington, is that it is a detailed and strategic framework for measuring, planning, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions and related climate impacts. Municipalities design and utilize climate action plans as customized roadmaps for making informed decisions and understanding where and how to achieve the most cost-effective emissions reductions in alignment with your municipal goals. Next. So what would our Climate Action Plan Committee do? Well, to a certain extent, that is for the committee to determine what is the most meaningful and effective measures that could be recommended. But certainly, it's to engage with the community, and I think it would be great for the community to have as much conversation around these issues as possible, to engage with all the stakeholders, businesses, town officials, the schools as well, of course, and to develop a meaningful and workable action plan. And the task should be a collaborative, informed, informative, and transparent process with ultimately the objective to significantly lower the town's greenhouse gas emissions towards the goal of net zero. Next, so who has a climate action plan? Well, I was searching the internet and I stopped after I reached all these towns in Massachusetts, and clearly the state does have its own plan as well. I'm happy to report that on a reliable authority, Canton did have a Climate Action Plan Committee article, and it was passed at Canton's town meeting very recently. So we certainly, I know we always want to keep up with our neighbors, but these are just examples of different towns that have done it, and quite frankly, their climate action plans are not identical copycat ones. They can be quite different. So just to speak a moment about the article, next slide, please. Just want to maybe give people some information. I am a member of the Town Energy and Sustainability Committee, have been a member for about a year and a half. We have a number of members who couldn't be here tonight, but have put a lot of years in there, and because of their work, a couple of years ago, the town actually has a consultant, a town energy manager. So she is a part-time consultant. She works for multiple clients, but she has worked, my understanding is, she's wonderful when you meet with her, and she's worked very productively and is extremely expert on these issues. So she would be a part of the committee. Certainly one member should be appointed by the town manager to make sure that it aligns with the town goals and with the town manager's agenda as well. One member to be appointed by our committee of committed climate change and environmental activists. And I would say this is like number 4 is really important to me. 6 members of the community. And I would really love for this committee to be opened up to new people who haven't been active yet, and to younger people for whom this is like a very huge issue that they focus on a lot. So I would love to have new people become activists in town through this committee, and also, quite frankly, through engaging in the public sessions that this committee would have to talk with people in the community about this issue. And again, the reason that this suggests, or actually instructed there, would be an interim report with sort of interim recommendations, is because we have to move as fast as possible. And at the end of the day, I think the point is to not draft up a nice little report that's put up on a shelf, but actually implement the recommendations.
Molly, you have about 30 seconds left.
I have about 30 seconds. And I would like to say there was some information in the book about applying for a grant. We did not, at this point in the grant funding, get that grant support from the Municipal Area Planning Council. However, we're sort of on the waiting list to get grant support. There are other grants out there that could help with the process and help with writing the report. And additionally, if we actually do adopt a climate action plan, we're going to be well positioned as a town to get further government assistance and to get other types of grant funding to make our dreams of climate action realized. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you, Molly. Okay, thank you for the presentation. Now it's time for technical questions. Anybody? Technical questions. Mr. Starr, please rise. There's a microphone over there. Go ahead. State your name and your precinct number, please, and your questions. Just slide that button up. It's going to turn green. Takes a second. Would someone be able to help him?
Edward Starr, Precinct 6. How many scientists do you have on that committee?
We haven't formed the committee. Anybody who has any interest in science would be more than welcome to apply with the Board of Select to join the committee. But we do have, but on our Energy and Sustainability Committee, we have a couple of members who work in the field, not me.
I don't see how you're going to change the climate.
Okay, so let's just give up and pack up our
Okay,
things.
thank you.
Sorry.
John, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Jonna Rosenblatt, Precinct 7.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. How come DEI isn't mentioned in this article? It's not even alluded to, yet when you go to the other pages and you look at the more comprehensive explanation of the article, it's mentioned there. Why is there absolutely no mention of it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of the question. Why isn't what mentioned?
DEI?
DEI? It's not present in the article. It's not part of the article. It may have been referenced, so if you looked at the backup information.
The backup.
Yes, I know what you're talking about. We applied for a grant from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. That was one of the elements that they were interested in as the grant-making agency. They were interested in that question to a certain extent. So we answered questions related to that. They have told us that for this round of funding, we did not get the grant, but we're on their list to get the grant. I think if you want me to explain where they're coming from, but that's not really the question with respect to our plan. We were just responding to their questionnaire or their grant application, but that's not built into the plan, quite frankly.
Okay, so it's not alluded to because it's not part of the plan. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
It's not going to be incorporated in any way, shape, or form into this article.
I wouldn't say any way, shape, or form, but it's not certainly in the committee. It's not really what we're looking for the committee to focus on. That being said, engaging everybody in the community in the dialogue about this is going to be important, and we certainly would want that to be an objective.
And are you going to look at...
Joanna, you had asked a couple of questions. Thank you very much for the discussion there. Mr. Cavey, would you like, as select board member, like to jump in there?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Also, Precinct 8. I only had one question. It's really just about the form of this, and it's one that I asked Town Council. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Part of the motion says, said committee shall be formed no later than July 30th, 2023. And as this is town meeting warrant for fiscal year 2024, I'm curious to know if there's any issue with having a requirement that preempts the start of that fiscal year.
No.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. We like those brief remarks. Thank you very much. Okay, Nick. Thank you very much. Next up, I have David Laurie, followed by Elliot Hansen. Mr. Laurie.
Thank you, David Lurie, Precinct 6, through Mr. Moderator to the petitioner. It sounds like you're trying to prevent greenhouse gases through combustible engine type things that we have in our homes. I'm thinking like gas-powered lawnmowers, gas-powered cars, natural gas for our stoves, that kind of thing. Is that where you're trying to go with this, where you're hoping to get people who use those things to stop using those things to go towards electricity? Is that the overall, is that what I'm hearing in the message when I hear
I
about?
would say one element of a household climate action plan would be to take a look at gas appliances versus electric appliances, and that's what the science tells us because the methane that is associated with gas is far worse than carbon dioxide, and that the electrical supply can be supported by renewables such as solar and power. If you're asking me, I mean, but this is really not really a climate action plan that's addressed to an individual's use or to an individual household, other than, quite frankly, through educational information with respect to that. I mean, so it's not about, I think we're following the lead as the state with respect to whatever the state might do as far as incentives to switch over and things of that nature. So I don't think we're going to be in the, I don't think that's what this is about. I don't think people should be afraid of that. It's good to have the information as an individual household, but it's about the town's activities and the town's choices and the town's buildings, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you for that. One more question.
Sure, go right ahead.
Do you have any science that supports the idea that the production of electricity or the batteries that get charged from electricity do not create pollution that's worse or equal to that of using combustible engine? Does the science prove that electricity and batteries is safer for the environment than combustible engines?
So I'm not a scientist, but I read many, many, many articles from many, many sources, and there are many, many government initiatives and that talk about electric-powered things because they can be powered by renewable sources such as solar and wind power. Have less greenhouse gases than other sources. So that's very much a widespread and widely known fact from many, many, many sources.
That's my two questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you
Next.
for those questions. I appreciate it.
Next up, Mr. Elliot Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. To the petitioner, I have a couple of questions here. Given the
Just shut off on you or something. Can you just double check it? And also remember name and precinct number, please, for the audience.
I'll be nice to it. Sorry I didn't mention this before. Elliot Hansen, Precinct 1.
Thank you.
I remembered. But given that we have on the state level, we have a federal level for the climate action, the United States is one of the least polluting, and in your presentation you showed some flooding in Pakistan. Pakistan, as you know, is adjacent to India, and India and China are the greatest polluter on the country, in the world, and they are not signatory to any of the climate action things. So how is Stoughton going to make a significant effect on India and China and the Pakistan area?
Thank you for the question again. Through you, Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
I think the point is, I can't answer for internationally what they're going to be doing in India or China, or whether they're doing enough, or whether, who compares with respect to the greenhouse gases. I don't think it's a competition. I think this is like a fight for the survival of the human race, okay? So you need to look at it from that perspective. Everybody who is alive has some type of greenhouse gas emission connected with their lives. So whether you live in a big house or a small house makes a difference. What kind of car you drive, what kind of food you eat, how you go about your daily life. We can all either contribute to solving the problem in a meaningful and urgent way, or we can say, I don't think that person is doing enough, so I'm not going to bother to do it either. So I think that, quite frankly, we are all in this together. So what happens in California, what happens, it is a global economy. It's all going to impact us. You can certainly imagine migration and unrest and even war and strife arising over scarcity and the dramatically catastrophic climate events that might happen. So it really is in our best interest, and it's the best interest of our children and grandchildren to do what we can. I mean, we can't control what they're going to do in another town or another country. We can control what we do and move the dial in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
Second question.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, given that CO2 is called a greenhouse gas, and Asian countries, specifically China and India, are the most heavily populated, and as far as I know, everybody on Earth exhales carbon dioxide. So perhaps the population control in that country might reduce the greenhouse gases far more than me not using a gas stove. Thank you.
If I recall, the moderator has the discretion, whether it's in order or out of order. So, Mr. Hanson, you all set? Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on. Next up is Heather Kirby. Please introduce yourself.
Heather Kirby, Precinct 6. I'm curious, you mentioned about the equality of curbside recycling for everyone. And so I am curious, and maybe this is a bit out of order, but what does happen to our small plastic items that we recycle?
That is clearly out of order at this point.
But if we're trying to make sure that everybody has access to curbside recycling,
Well,
where
let
do the
me ask
plastics
petition.
go?
Hang on a second. Let me ask petition. Is anything to do with recycling plastics or glass involved in this
I
climate
could
action?
imagine that that would be among the issues the committee would want to address.
Okay, then I'll allow your question. Go ahead.
So can someone, and I don't expect that maybe our petitioner would be able to answer, but just on a town-wide level, where do our plastic recyclables end up?
Page Street?
And from there, where do they go?
That is an issue that is on the table that the Sustainability Committee has been in discussions about and will continue to work on. I understand that from year to year, the market for recycling of plastics, changes, has become more difficult. I think we have an issue with the way Page Street is operating, which is not necessarily as productive as it could be to actually having people take the plastic and take the other things and make something useful of them. So that's definitely something that's absolutely worth exploring, that you want it to be meaningful and that the products to actually be put back into the manufacturing stream if you are going to recycle.
Okay.
So at this point, they're not quite recycled yet?
I don't know exactly what's happening at Page Street.
We can ask the town. Anybody from the town? Can anybody from the town?
DPW might know, or that's the point of Page Street is for
Let me,
things to be recycled.
hold on a second. Let me ask if there's any information from the town. Mr. Coulter?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, I apologize. Mr. Defoe is not here this evening because of a death in his family. We know that it goes to Page Street in the recycling bids. It does not go into the C&D facility. We would have to research where it goes from there. And we
Okay,
will
we
get
hopefully
back,
will, thank
we can
you.
get back to you.
So
We'll
you
get
could-
an answer for you.
Okay, thank you
That's-
so much.
You have another question? You have
No,
one?
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up is Mr. Eric Coleman in the back. Go ahead. sir.
Eric Coleman, Precinct 5. Would you consider this an advisory committee?
I guess I would, in other words, I think ultimately when it comes to the report and the recommendations, there would be further implementation steps. We're not empowered to implement these things, quite frankly. The committee would not be empowered to implement specific things, so I think it would be an action plan of recommendations and steps. But one of the point of having a town appointee from the town manager on the committee is to be realistic and to have manageable goals or manageable plans, so that in fact then the town manager and the town implements them, or whoever may be called upon to implement some of the suggestions, some of the recommendations. So I guess it's fair to say it's an advisory committee.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Mr. Juan Fox.
Juan Fox, Precinct 1. The 9 members of the committee, are these going to be paid positions?
No more than school committee positions are paid, no.
There's no, the answer is no. Being that, I noticed that there's no time frame for the position. Are these perpetual after being chosen?
I think that the point is to have the committee issue a report, and there is a deadline for the report. So I think at this point in time, it's envisioned to be a committee that, I should say, it should be in place until June 30th of 2025. It might require further action, and we would ask legal counsel whether that needs to be renewed or extended, or needs to come back to town meeting to make that a continuous committee versus a committee with a time frame that it ends. It certainly would not be a bad idea to have it be a standing committee. It could work quite, in conjunction with the standing committee of the Energy and Sustainability Committee, and yet have a different focus. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Moving on, Mr. Ventresco. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Starr, you already asked your questions earlier?
Well, I have a statement to make,
No,
sir.
not yet. I'll call on you when we get to the pro and con statement issue. Thank you, Mr. Starr. We'll get to you. Next up is Mr. Peter Ventresco, please.
Peter Ventresco, Precinct 8. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to whoever can answer my question. Don't these articles always have to go through the Board of Selectmen first before they're either voted up or down to come in front of this body? Or a member here has jumped over the Board of Selectmen and brought it right to the floor for us to decide?
All right, let me defer the town council. 1 minute, please.
So anyone from the general public in the town of Stoughton, so long as they get a sufficient number of signatures, can file a petitioned article. And what happens is when that article gets filed, the town clerk verifies the names and address of those who have signed to determine if it's compliant with law. If it is, it has to go on the warrant. The Board of Selectmen has no discretion whether or not to put a petitioned article on the warrant.
All right, I have one more question.
Thank you. Go ahead.
The petitioner brought up gas stoves to ban them. Is this group going to have the authority to say, I can't have a gas stove no more? Because if you do any kind of cooking, it's gas, not electric.
Let me defer to the town council on that one.
So to be clear, a committee just prepares a report with recommendations. If there were changes that were recommended, such as in the form of a bylaw, or such as in the form of special legislation, which would get submitted to the general court, that would have to be approved through the town meeting process. There would be no way that a committee could create a binding bylaw on residents without your approval on town meeting.
Thank you, town council. Next up is Lisa Lyons, followed by you, Denise, okay? Lisa, please introduce yourself. See if we can get the green light. Okay, stand by. Someone's coming down to check it. Just stand by.
Thank you. Hi, Lisa Lyons, Precinct 2. With all respect, are you not concerned that you might be creating hysteria over climate change, given when we were younger there was hysteria over acid rain going on with the plastics where we don't even know where they go? We all of us, no matter where we are, want to do good for our world that we live in. I'm just wondering if you're not concerned that you might be creating hysteria and without realizing the financial effects you could have on many families and increasing the size of government without success.
So I don't think anything in this is going to increase the size of government in the town of Stoughton. I don't think that's the plan. I don't see anybody in this room who's gotten hysterical yet. I know that many young people actually are very anxious over this issue, and I think the best way to deal with that climate anxiety is through a plan and through making measurable progress. And can I just comment that there are many, many wonderful people who are dedicated, that they're scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs, business people working for nonprofits who are making wonderful strides and showing us what we can do to get where we need to get to avoid the worst climate disaster. So we don't need to, I'm not encouraging hysteria, I'm not encouraging terror, but I think we have to look reality in the face.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Denise Bronson.
Denise Bronston, Precinct 2. Through you, Mr. Moderator. There was a town that put in windmills, and it gave everybody headaches. Are you suggesting that we're going to put windmills in the town of Stoughton?
It's really just, this article is just to create the committee.
Okay.
Okay? That's all it does. But thank you for the question. We appreciate that. Next up is Mr. Starr. We're not at the section yet for comments.
Herbert Starr, Precinct 6.
Mr. Starr, hold on a minute. We're not, all due respect, we're not there yet. Let me take some more questions, then I'll get back to you. Okay, sir? Thank you. Just stand by. Mr. Parlin, please.
Yes, Richard Parlin, Precinct 1, whoever can answer through you, Mr. Moderator. If we go all solar and wind and get rid of all the gas utensils or whatever, is there chances of us having rolling blackouts like other states?
Let me, Mr. Parlin, I appreciate your question, but we're just talking about creating the committee, okay? You can get up and argue at the committee if it is created, if it gets that far. Okay, thank you for your question, though. They're all important questions. I'm not going to, Mr. Murphy, one last question, because we need to keep moving here. We have about 12 questions. We'll take your last question, then we're going to get to Mr. Starr for a comment. Go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
Peter Murphy, Precinct 2. This committee, once developed, once it's established, will this have any oversight or input on any future developments coming into the town and what those developments could have within the town? Is that potential?
I think it's a potential that the committee would want to make recommendations concerning development, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, there's been about 13 people with questions. If I don't hear any objections, I'm going to move right to the public pro and con and comments. Seeing no objections, Mr. Starr, please introduce yourself.
Edward Starr, Precinct 6. I've been an engineer for 50 years, and in order to change the climate a little bit, you'd have to get rid of every vehicle in the town. No vehicles allowed. That's a statement, and that's a true statement.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Peggy, please introduce yourself, please.
Is this working?
Yes, yes it is.
I don't know if you've all been paying attention to the young people of this country.
Peggy, please introduce yourself.
What?
Please introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Peggy Sewick, Precinct 2. If you've been paying attention, the young people of this country, this is the most vital issue that they vote for. They are so concerned, and so should this body be. This is probably the best thing this town could do. If anything, to look into what we could do. We're not China, we're not India. In fact, they're choking on their air, if it be clear. We need to do something. We're the micro of the macro. We need to look into it for our town. There isn't anything that says we can't put solar panels on our buildings to save the environment, to save money on electricity. There's nothing to say that we can't do this. We've voted for parks to improve our environment, to have places to go and breathe and enjoy the environment. Well, if you don't do something about climate change, there will be no environment for you to go in and enjoy. That means the oceans, the lakes, the ponds. So I urge this town to vote for this article and have this committee formed so they can inform us. I can see from the room that nobody is informed as they should be, and maybe this committee could serve that purpose. So I urge you to pass this. I think it's an urgent issue.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Kirby. Introduce
Robert
yourself.
Kirby from Precinct 6. I understand that this is just an advisory committee being formed at this point, but I'm against this, and I will be a no vote because I think the notion, the ideology it's predicated on has no data to support it. While there is climate change, of course, it's always changing, there is no empirical data that says that human-created CO2 emissions are responsible for all these negative and adverse effects they're talking about. And I'm talking about this from a point of actually having studied it in depth. I've read many books on it from people on both, the conservative and liberal side and the moderates in between. Take, for example, an emeritus professor of atmospheric physics at MIT for over 30 years, a distinguished fellow, says that the UN documents themselves don't adhere to environmental climate change alarmism. There's an excellent book out I read in the last couple of years by someone who was always considered an activist for the environment for many decades. He's very well known on both the left and the right. His name's Michael Schellenberger. He wrote a book called Apocalypse Never, which gets very much into the brass tacks of the whole plethora of issues that surround this very broad topic. But for example, if we look at things like energy production and emissions, the cleanest energy form we have on the planet is nuclear energy. There's zero carbon emissions with that. And yet the people that are proposing climate alarmism don't support nuclear energy. And that's well documented. The state of California is a perfect example of what's happened there with their energy crises. So when we get into the implications of the recommendations that will be made, whether they're sustainable energy producing technologies like solar and wind and so forth, I'm an adherent to solar power. I have solar panels on my home. But I understand also they're going to have a shelf life and they're going to end up in a landfill at some point, as with every single windmill we've ever seen. These things aren't very prevalent in Massachusetts. You see them in certain places like down towards the Cape and whatnot. But they're only good for about 20 to 30 years at the most, and then they're going to be scrapped. It would take about 1 billion windmills to replace all the fossil fuel-driven energy in this country if we wanted to make a switch over to wind. And the amount of real estate that's required for solar panels is
Mr.
vast.
Kirby, got about 2 seconds. Wrap
All
it
right.
up.
So, in other words, it's a big topic. We don't have the bandwidth to hash out all the details, but I'm a no vote, and I would say I think it's not a good use of our resources.
Okay, thank you.
Can I respond to that?
Not right now. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Just hold your thought. Sir, could you introduce yourself? I don't know your name. I apologize.
Winslow Laguerre, Precinct 7. I think this is just a committee to research and look at it. I sat here and I listened to her presentation for 10 minutes. Nowhere did I see or I heard that our lawnmowers are going to be taken away. Nowhere did I hear that they're going to put windmills on everyone's houses. So I don't see why everyone's being so hesitant and doom and gloom about a committee that's going to research. And we all know that anything they suggest has to come to this town meeting where we vote yay or nay on whatever they propose. I don't think that they're coming in here saying, starting next year, everyone's going to be doing this. Because I don't see it, and I didn't hear it, and I don't see why people are being doom and gloom about it.
All right, thank you for your comments. Okay, go ahead, ma'am. Please introduce yourself.
Liz Lieber, Precinct 3. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Patrick Moore. He was the founder, the only scientist founder of the Greenpeace. And he left Greenpeace, and his statement is, global warming hoax pushed by corrupt scientists hooked on government grants. So he believes that they're only taking grants from people who are doing what, paying for grants of scientists that are doing what those in power at the colleges want.
Thank
so there
you.
is another side to it.
Thank you for your comments. All right, next up we have Mike Loran.
Michael Horan, Precinct 5. One thing that struck me in looking over the materials that were submitted was that the proponent, as part of her original submission, included an article from World Science News from January 2023, talking about the need to take action prior to us hitting that 1.5 degrees Celsius tipping point, and then open tonight by noting that the World Meteorological Association has, since that time, revamped its own forecasts and is now basically saying that there's a 65% chance of hitting that tipping point come 2027. In other words, the window is closing. I honestly don't know at this point, even though I've been involved in this for about 20 years. I don't know the extent to which we can now control and curb emissions, but I do know that The second portion of the plan that the proponent has noted, mitigation is critical. Maybe we can't change global patterns, but as we're already seeing, there are going to be consequences for every community, and they're going to be different for every community in terms of how this affects our landscape, our infrastructure, our energy distribution, pretty much every and all aspect of life. Even if you don't agree that climate change is caused by human beings, even if you, et cetera, even if you accept the fact that it's happening, at least understand that every community does need a mitigation plan in effect. And that, to me, is probably the most critical part of this. I couldn't be more supportive of this article. I think it's the best article in the warrant this year, and I thank the proponent for proposing it.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, I have Laura Gunn. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Laura Gunn, Precinct 5. This is a really politically charged topic, but I will assure people that there is empirical evidence that climate change is happening and that humans have a significant contribution to this. But even more so, I think as a town, and one of the things that makes me proud to live in this town is we take responsibility for a lot of things. We have preservation committees. We have a number of different things that are showing our responsibility to our community and the world that we live in. So I think that that's something that we need to remember. Also, as someone who has a doctorate in environmental health sciences, I have studied this for many years, and if you're looking for volunteers, as someone to participate on your committee, I'm happy to volunteer. I think this is an extremely important topic, and as a previous speaker said, we are not talking about taking anything away. And I think we've heard from a number of proponents and we've heard from a number of skeptics, and in both cases, I think all of that underlies the importance of having a committee that will allow these topics to come up and be discussed in a way that this town feels like they understand and that they have transparency into the kinds of things that can happen to make things better.
Thank you for your comments. Next up is Carolyn Campbell. Did you have? Sorry, I wasn't. Oh, okay, that's okay. Mr. Quigley, you're next up. Please introduce yourself.
Is it on? Ed. Ed Quigley, Precinct 2. I found the magic spot. I'm a little confused, Mr. Moderator. I thought we were talking about forming a committee that would be answerable to this body and be making recommendations. I didn't hear them making recommendations yet. I heard people in the body making recommendations of whatever they're afraid of, but I didn't hear the petitioner. I had reassurance from town council that this goes before this body, whatever their recommendations are, and we make those decisions. So unless people don't have confidence in their own town meeting, I don't know what the issue is. And just a point of, if you remember, previous speaker alluded to acid rain. It was something we were afraid of. Something about it.
Thank you for your comments. Next up is Juan Fox. We got another microphone coming.
Juan Fox, Precinct 1. I have a problem with this in that I have a problem with increasing bureaucracy in this town. Additional committees for this and that, it makes it more difficult for governance in the town. I look at the description also. I see town energy manager. Manager usually is a paid position, and I don't see anything that specifically said that these aren't paid positions. Looking at the, what you said, it's supposed to produce a final report, but I don't see anything says that that's when the group disbands. I think the article is light on the description of this committee, and being that also I'm against additional bureaucracy in this town, I'm going to vote no for this.
Thank you for your comments. Moving on. Jonah Rosenblatt, I think, were you up next? Do we have her? Yes. Please introduce yourself.
Jonna Rosenblatt, Precinct 7. New York City also decided to have this kind of commission, and then they outlawed natural gas, and one restaurant went and said that they couldn't abide by that, so they allowed them to have the gas. So it makes you feel like, well, if this is a real empirical imminent issue, then why are these exceptions being made? And then if you look at the batteries for the cars, not only do they cost $20,000 to replace, or even solar panels, what's going to happen to all of these? Where are we going to stockpile them? What about the minerals that are used to supply the batteries? The mining that goes on and the destruction to the land. And I just feel like this is a farce, and I feel like this is about control. And this is about a way for our government to, well, I think we're being gaslit, and it's really a shame that people don't see it, but that's how I see it.
Okay, thank you for your comments. We're going to move on. Next up is Mr. John Walsh.
John Walsh, Precinct 3, move the question.
Okay, moving the question means cutting off debate. I'm going to need 2/3 majority to cut off debate. I'm going to ask for a voice vote first. If there's any question in the mind of the moderator, we'll do the clickers. So to cut off debate, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. I believe the ayes have it. All right, so now we're going to move to the vote. Are we ready? Please vote now. Just a reminder, simple majority. All right, let me just announce the vote. Article 71, the Climate Action Plan Committee passes 75 yes, 34 no, 0 abstentions.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Okay, I'm just going to everybody just stay in your seats. I'm going to take a quick recess, and we're just going to change up. I'm going to ask for the deputy moderator to come down to moderate Article 72.
All right, we are on Article 72, speed limit change to 25 miles per hour. It's at the bottom of page 61. And Mr. Anzavino?
Yes, the petitioner has asked me to put forth that this article be dismissed.
Second. All right. So it's been moved and seconded that the article be dismissed. It's a simple majority. So this is simple majority we can do with a voice vote. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. The ayes have it. So Article 72 has been dismissed.
Nice job.
All right.
Come on, let's hear it for Carmel, our moderator, deputy moderator. Hey, there we go.
You ought to stay up there. You move them a lot quicker.
Mr. Anzavino, you're out of order. Mr. Murphy, go ahead. You have a point of interest or point of information?
Peter Murphy, Precinct 2. The question, we should probably bring the deputy moderator back. But the question I have is this article being dismissed prohibit it from being brought up, like for a year, 2 years, or anything?
No.
So we'll see you next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Town Council. We like those quick answers. We appreciate that. Mr. Town Manager, let's bring her back next town meeting, okay? Sorry about Brian, but. All right, next up, that was Article 72. We're going to turn the page to page 62, and it's going to be Article 73, charter change. Just a comment. There was a motion that was handed out. It was been on the virtual table since like April 29th. I hope everybody's checking that virtual table. It should be the precinct chairs. We made sure you got another copy of it if you didn't see the virtual table. Always check the virtual table. We should live on the virtual table, just a comment. Okay, at this point in time, I'm going to ask for the motion from Mr. Sawyer. Introduce yourself and read your motion.
Larry Sauer, Precinct 2, Chair of the Charter Review Committee. So the motion is to see if the town will vote to include in the Town of Stoughton bylaws, Part 1, Administrative Legislation, the addition of a Charter Review Committee as described below. It would be an addition of Chapter 11, Charter Review Committee, 11.1, Duties of the Committee. The Charter Review Committee shall serve as an advisory committee to the Stoughton Representative Town Meeting by making recommendations to the town through the Select Board for changes to the town charter by proposing articles for the annual town meeting warrant. As an advisory committee to town meeting, it shall be subject to all the provisions of the town charter and bylaws regarding public hearings, legal advertising, reporting, publishing, and distribution of its recommendations to the town meeting representatives. 11.2, membership of the committee. This committee shall consist of town meeting representatives who shall serve for terms of 2 years as long as they remain town meeting representatives. One town meeting representative shall be appointed at large by the moderator, and one member shall be appointed by the chairperson of each precinct delegation. The membership shall also include the deputy moderator and one town meeting representative from the Committee on Municipal Regulations.
Larry, let me just interrupt you. Could you just say, as written on the handout list, do we have any objections?
Okay. I'd like to say as written on the handout if there are no objections.
Are there any objections? Seeing none. All right, thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Carolyn Campbell. I'm going to read the municipal regulations report. No recommendation was made as a quorum was not available for a vote on the article. Okay, Mr. Sauer, how you pronounce your name again?
It's sour, just like
Sauer.
sauerkraut.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Sauer, please present your presentation.
So I'm going to speak briefly, and then we'll also ask one of our committee members to speak as well. So the reason that we have proposed this addition to the bylaws is that the Charter Review Committee was formed as a temporary committee in 1975, and their charge was to report to the town meeting in 1977 to review the charter and give a report to town meeting. They did that in 1977 and then asked town meeting to dissolve the committee. That was rejected by town meeting, and that was all that was ever written about the purpose of the Charter Review Committee. So we have had many discussions about what exactly it is that we're supposed to be doing, what we're allowed to do, but there isn't anything in writing, and all this really does is put into the bylaws what the purpose of the committee is, what the membership of the committee is, their term of office, and the process for proposing articles to town meeting. Okay. Amy, if you'd like to speak.
Hi, Amy Poliafco. I'm a member of Charter Review Committee and I'm in Precinct 5. And just to preempt one question, this was reviewed by Town Council, and that is why there is an amendment that changes in Section 11-6. We originally had put that we would make recommendations directly to this body, and Town Council wanted us to change it so it goes to the Select Board first. We can't directly input anything into the warrant. And I think any questions anyone has?
Are we all set? Thank you for the presentation. Okay, technical questions. Mr. Hanson, please introduce yourself.
Elliot Hanson, Precinct 1, and a microphone. Hello there. It seems to be working, is it?
We can hear you
good.
fine.
I can hear myself think. Is this going to be a standing committee?
No, it's not to be a standing committee. That would require a change to the charter. So it would just be a permanent committee rather than a temporary committee.
So it's basically an ad hoc committee. When the Rules Committee decides something is a change in the Charter Review Committee will review it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I did see what I think may be a conflict here. Section 11-3, it says, consider recommendations for changes to the charter, and then limitation says may not propose any changes in the charter. And further on, it says that they will make recommendations. So I think there's a little bit of a conflict there.
Okay. Let me just read that whole piece. It's
Under what section, Larry?
it's section 11.3, and it says the Charter Review Committee will meet on a regular basis to study the town charter, make recommendations for updates or changes to the town charter, and sorry, that's not the piece.
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry, under 4, it says...
11.4, it says that there's a conflict there.
Right. The Charter Review Committee may not propose any changes in the charter relating in any way to the composition, mode of election or appointment, or term of office of the legislative body, or the Select Board, or the school committee, or town manager. That's actually state law, that those kinds of changes to the charter require a charter commission, and that's an elected charter commission.
Thank you.
I think I missed that because of the microphone, but that's all right.
You good?
It's clarified something for somebody.
I can repeat it if you'd like. Essentially, those sections are reserved for a charter commission, which we are not. We're a charter review committee. So by statute from the state, we can't make changes to those specific provisions, which is why we're making it clear in here that we understand legally we cannot change those things.
So that
No more questions. You asked several questions already. Are you point of inquiry?
Yes, I was.
Okay, just want to make sure you clearly state that to me.
It's just, I'd like to clarify things as much as possible. This committee new committee that's actually reconstituted the old committee, is there expanded powers or not with this new one? Why don't we just reestablish it?
So to be clear, the committee has been standing as a temporary committee for the last 46 years, and it does work every year, meeting at least, we in the last year met every 2 weeks all year long. It's just a matter of making it clear what we actually do, because there's literally 3 sentences from 1975 that explain what we're doing. So we're just trying to put it on paper to make it clear what we can and cannot do and what our procedure is for doing so.
Thank you. I was on the Charter Review Committee for a while, so thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, next up is Pat Colburn. Please introduce yourself.
Pat Colburn, Precinct 4. Can you tell me what date this was voted by Charter Review and what the vote count was out of how many attending? I know it said unanimous, but did everybody show up and it was truly unanimous? So I'd love to have the vote counts.
Okay, I would need to check it, but I believe it was 5. We had a quorum, so we could take a vote. And that was, we generally had 5 or 6 people who consistently showed up for the meeting.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, how many people total are on the committee? Is it 10, 9?
It has varied. If all of the committee members are appointed and elected, there are 11. Currently, there are 8 members.
I'm sorry, for clarification, Mr. Moderator, isn't the deputy moderator also a member? So you'd have one from each precinct and the deputy moderator?
Well, there were some precincts that had resignations that were not filled.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Technical question section before we move on. All right. Seeing none, we're going to move right on to the pro and con debate. Statements, anybody? This is just simple majority. I see no one. We're going to move. You want to just...
So to be clear, because Mr. Sauer made his main motion to be what's showing as an amended motion, that's what you're voting on. There's no amendment to be voted on. The way it was moved to you is how it's printed here in this handout.
I'm sorry, Ira decided to move on, so I'm not going to allow any more comments or anything. Excuse me, to the audience, if you have something to say, a point of inquiry, please rise, state your name and your point, please. Then we can take that into consideration.
Peter Murphy, Precinct 2. The person had stood up. You turned to the lawyer so you couldn't see her. She was already standing before you cut off debate.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Murphy. See how things work? It works so smoothly and easy. Please state your name and your comment.
Heather Kirby, Precinct 6. I'm against the permanency of this committee as it stands, as it was made clear on the bringing forth of Article 40, in which the goal of doing what was easy took precedence over doing what would have been right, addressing the exception rather than promoting a change of language that could result in centralized voting rather than neighborhood voting, which is more accessible to our constituents.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else, since we've opened up pro and con debate again? Anybody? Okay, seeing no one, are we ready for the vote? Simple majority, yes, no, abstention. Please vote now.
Thank you, town meeting representatives.
Okay, thank you. Let me just inform the town meeting reps and people at home of the vote. Article 73, charter change, as defined by Mr. Larry Sauer, passes 80 yes, 25 no, 3 abstentions. Thank you. Moving on to Article 74, adopt financial policy statement. Can I have a motion, Mr. David Laurie?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 74, adopt financial policy statement as written in the warrant.
Is there a second? Second. Seconded by George Delinsky, Precinct 2. And let me just read if there's a report here. Finance Committee report, please. On page 63 we are.
Finance Committee voted 10 to 0 to accept and recommend to town meeting Article 74.
I'll read the, you want to read the municipal regulations, Deputy Moderator?
Municipal regulations voted 5-0 to accept and recommend to town meeting Article 74.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. Mr. Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to just start by saying I only put this motion on the floor because it's really a symbolic vote, because we were fortunate enough to pick up a town manager and a select board that were in favor of actually executing a financial policy statement. So I want to use just this time to thank some people that made it possible for this to happen, and then let people do what they'd like to do with that. So I have the luxury of actually holding people in their seats as the last petitioner for town meeting, so I'll make this brief. It was not my idea to actually do a financial policy statement. I am not the originator of this idea. You can go back for years attending, the Association of Town Finance Committees, which is a subset of what the Massachusetts Municipal Association, the MMA, sets up so that finance committees could actually develop best practices and actually do right by the taxpayers in their town by making sure that they actually do things that are prudent and sensible and actually positive for your town. It was frustrating as I began this whole thing many years ago when I was making yes votes on millions and millions of dollars of articles and never really knowing what kind of impact that might have on the people in my community. So when I saw different towns presenting at this the Association of Town Finance Committees, these people with, shining, AAA bond ratings and great stories about how their town adopted these very policies, I say, why can't our town be excellent like that? Every year it seems like we're asked to vote, and what we end up having is all the distress associated with it. Why should we be stressed? Every year it's a different thing. This year it happened to be the health fund, right? It's always a different thing that makes us very tense and on the verge of having to do overrides and all these nasty things which hurt a lot of people. So what happened is that while I was sitting on the Finance Committee, there's an individual who sits on the board. And I was sitting there thinking that I was just kind of spitting in the wind as Dave on Dave Island, just trying to adopt something excellent for the town like this. And she came up to me and said, I want to help with this. I want to see something happen. And I was like, wow, this is great. I couldn't believe that somebody would actually volunteer to sit in a library with me for hours on end, week after week, until we came up with ideas like this. Now you hear, select board members, they'll campaign. They'll put door hangers, ads in the newspaper, and it'll say fiscal responsibility, or it might say, responsible with budgets, and all kinds of platitudes about how great they're going to be with their budgets. And all I keep thinking is watch your wallet. It's like, because they're going to be spending a lot of money. But in this exception, it was the chair, the current chair, Deborah Roberts, who sat down with me for hours on end. But it didn't stop there. After Finance Committee, when we were doing those kind of things, she went on to run for Select Board. And she not only said that she was going to be fiscally responsible, she actually, after being elected, within 5 months, she was able to convince the chair at that time. It was Christine Howe. Some people in the room remember Christine. She used to be the chair. She was able to get the Division of Local Services, which is part of the DOR, which act as consultants to towns like Stoughton. And they said, you got to adopt this. This is perfect for the town of Stoughton. You'll realize that the bond market will look favorably on your town. So when you're asking for a favorable bond rating, they see that you have this kind of thing. It shows that you're putting guardrails on how you spend your money. And so she was able to do that, but the only hesitation at that point was the town manager at that time was grappling with a fire station, which took priority over everything, so she couldn't actually move forward. Fast forward 3 years later, she becomes the chair of the select board, and what does she do? She puts together a team that goes hunting for a new town manager. The town manager they elect is Mr. Tom Coulter. Tom Coulter comes in, and I was thinking before he was around, thinking, geez, what am I going to do? And I was asking around, and a nice gentleman from Brookline says, why don't you just do a referendum? You can't actually create policies as a town meeting rep, but you could ask the select board through a referendum to do it. So I said, all right, I'll throw that together. And Mr. Coulter allowed me to come in and just talk to him about the topic. And he took it on, like saying, yeah, I want to do that. That's an excellent idea. And I was like, I almost fell out of my chair. I couldn't believe that they went out and they found a town manager that not only wanted to build a policy statement like this, but actually follow through and demonstrate to town meeting that when you're asked to vote on millions of dollars and they want you to vote number 1A, that you're not going to have the floor fall out from under you when you do it. You're not going to be hurting anybody. So when I heard that we had this kind of a select board that went out and found Mr. Coulter, and Mr. Coulter was just the right individual that was perfect for creating this and executing it year after year, almost like a report card to say, here's where we're strong, here's where we're weak, here's what we have to work on. Everybody, when they go to vote for their budgets, will actually understand where we stand as a community without having to go from crisis to crisis. So I just wanted to use this time to thank everybody who's responsible for this to happen, and I have nothing else to say. Anybody want a question or comment? I'm here. All set.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Laurie. Okay, this is the time for technical questions. Pat Colburn?
Pat Colburn, Precinct 4. Can you just explain to me why it says that adopt a new financial policy developed by the town manager and approved by the select board? Why was this petitioned in by a citizen rather than the board or the town manager submitting this article?
Would you like me to?
Who can answer that best?
I mean, I'd like to know why the town didn't submit the article.
Yeah, I think I could help. I couldn't create a policy for the town. That's forbidden. What this is a referendum vote, so it signals to the town manager as well as the select board, this is what the town meeting wants to see happen as a referendum. It is not to actually create, we do not get to create the committee, or excuse me, the policy, or the process to get a policy. This does not do that. It's a referendum to have them do it.
I don't see, I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator, I don't see anywhere where this says it's a referendum vote requesting that the town act on it. This is basically saying the town manager created this policy and we're asked to vote on it. So that to me is a big discrepancy.
All right, good question. Let me defer to the town council.
Thank you.
So what this article is a non-binding advisory vote. Okay, so the board, your elected officials, can learn what the appetite of the town is through your vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're still in technical questions segment. Anybody else before we move on? All right, looking all around the room. See none. Okay, we're going to move into pro and con debate, comment section. Mr. Murphy, please identify yourself.
That wasn't funny, Bob.
I was just swallowing a piece of candy or something, lifesaver.
Choking on it. Peter Murphy, Precinct 2.
It was stuck on my tooth. I wasn't actually eating it. Thank you.
Again, in case you missed it, Peter Murphy, Precinct 2. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the petitioner, he and I met when this came before, I'm not sure which committee it was, and I applauded him for this, and as he said, this is putting guardrails on our spending. And what it does is it's also showing accountability. And it also basically, as I told David, I says, this actually dovetailed into my article. Again, there's things that we have to look at that we're spending the money, and basically this is another way of doing it. So I commend the petitioner for submitting this article, and I applaud him. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else for comment, pro and con debate? Cynthia Walsh?
I move the previous question.
Okay, before I take that, anybody else for pro and con debate? That was only one comment. Anybody else? Pat Colburn? I'm going to hold off on you, Cynthia. We only have one comment, so I'd like to have at least 3 if possible.
I know you have all night, but the rest of us don't.
I really don't have all night, but I won't go there, okay? But thank you very much for your comments. Pat Colburn, please identify
Pat
yourself.
Colburn, Precinct 4. I don't know if I'm for this. I'm thinking I'm not. The select board could create a policy and do just this. In some of the other cases, we formed these advisory, non-binding advisory committees, and maybe they had to be, but I just don't see why this one has to be non-binding. I don't see why the select board didn't create a policy. So I'm on the fence, and I'll decide when I hit my clicker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, one last one. Mr. Ventresco, come on down.
Peter Ventresco, Precinct 8. I'd like to thank Mr. Laurie, the town manager, Deborah, for putting this together, and the Board of Selectmen getting behind it. And I think we should pass this article. It's going to do wonders for the town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that was the third person. Anybody else? Seeing none, Cynthia Walsh, now please provide your motion.
I would respectfully like to move the question, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, the question has been moved. It's been seconded. Who took the second here? Peter Murphy seconded that from Precinct 2. Okay, by voice vote, this will cut off debate. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. We're going to go right to the vote. Are we ready? Simple majority. Please vote now. Okay, Article 74, motion passes, 68 yes, 36 no, 3 abstentions. Now, before everybody leaves, there was an article to reconsider, a motion to reconsider Article 6. I sent out an email last night. Hopefully it got to people. If there's someone, this is the time for reconsideration.
Yep. Mr. Moderator, thank you. John Angelino, Precinct 4, Vice Chair of the Finance Committee. I'd like to move that we reconsider Article 6, deposit to the stabilization fund. The reason, thank you.
Okay. Is there a second? Mr. Pinokian. All right.
My reason for this is when Article 58 failed, that was being funded by $75,000 in free cash. And if this gets reconsidered, I'm going to make a motion to put that in the stabilization fund.
Okay. I know the hour's getting late. Is there any, since it didn't go before committee, it's fine for reconsideration. Is there any technical questions? Or Mr. Laurie?
Just a real quick question, through you, Mr. Moderator. David Lurie, Precinct 6, to the town accountant. If this actually does not get, if this money does not get put into stabilization after we vote on this, does it go to excess capacity in the budget? Where would it land?
No, it just becomes part of next year. Oh, sorry, Mr. Moderator. Bill Rowe, Town Accountant. It just becomes part of next year's free cash calculation.
Free cash, not the excess capacity, but under free
Correct.
cash? Free cash.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, I'm going to go right to pro and con debate. Anybody? Seeing none, this is motion to reconsideration. Is that just simple? We're going to just double check. I believe it's simple majority. Simple majority. Okay, is it up on the screen? Please vote now. Simple majority. Okay, Article 6, motion to reconsider. Article 6 passes, 94 yes, 12 no, 0 abstentions.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes, Mr. Dolinsky.
If there's no other business on the table.
There is one more motion. I'll call you back. I'll point right to you. You hold the microphone. Go ahead. Just a point of warning, please. Don't anybody take them. Remove the microphone from Mr. Dolinsky. Thank you. Mr. Anzavino.
Use a mic.
Okay.
Over the
they have
weekend.
been- They're being used quite heavily. But go ahead.
It was almost dead when I got it. John Anzavino, Precinct 4, Vice Chair of the Finance Committee. There's $75,000 in free cash that has not been appropriated now since Article 58 failed, and I would move that we deposit this $75,000 into the stabilization fund listed in Article 6.
Okay, been moved by Mr. Anzavino. Seconded by, I heard Mr. Hanson from Precinct 1 before everybody else. It's been moved and seconded. Any technical questions on that? Seeing none. Let's go in pro and con debate. Anybody? Seeing none. Okay, we ready to vote? This is simple majority. Please vote now, 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah.
Okay, the motion passes 100 yes, 6 no, 0 abstentions. Now we recognize Mr. Dolinsky.
Mr. Moderator, I move that we dissolve the annual town meeting
Okay.
and reconvene next year.
Who seconded that? Mr. Scott Carrara. By voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Have a great evening. Thank you to town meeting reps for coming all these nights. Everybody have a safe and wonderful summer.